Здравствуйте.
Good afternoon.
Прежде всего, я бы хотел
First of all,
поблагодарить
I would like to thank
организаторам этого
the
очень
organizers
оригинального форума,
of this very unordinary forum
в особенности ректора Сколтех
and rector of the Skoltech, Alexander Kuleshov, for the invitation to
выступить.
take part to present
Он находится
with my report.
немножко в стороне от
It's a little bit
темы форума, взаимодействия
aside from the key topic of the forum, interaction of capitals.
и краю. Это будет
It's somewhere
научный доклад,
far from it. It will be a scientific report, and it's very similar to the report which you will have
разница будет
in the evening by Professor Hippoton. And as a notation,
о чем
he will speak about black holes,
удивительные объекты, но они
surprising objects, but they are quite rare ones. And the nearest black hole is located more than 1,000
ну, а ближайшая сверхмассивная черная дыра
years,
в центре нашей галактики в
and the supermassive black hole is even
световых лет.
on a bigger distance.
Я возьму шире. Я буду рассказывать о
I will tell you about the whole
Вселенной, которую мы видим,
part of the universe which we can see
и что с ней было, и что с ней было.
and what happened with it in the past.
Но все-таки у меня и пересечение вот с
But anyway, I have some common
наукой и капитал.
things with the capital, with the science.
Вот я начну с ключевого слова.
And I will start with the keyword, natural needs of a human. Satisfaction of
Потребности человека
our natural needs.
из тех
There is
источников
a source
предприниматели делают как
where entrepreneurs make money.
я его касаться.
And the second source is, of course, the
Ну так вот, вот
state order.
естественный
I will not cover upon them. Natural needs, natural demands of a human being.
человека, ну какие они, конечно, все
What are? Everybody knows that.
нормальная пища,
Food,
в случае болезни,
in case of illness, medical service,
и кроме этого и
and in addition,
стремление к красоте,
an attempt
к творчеству,
for beauty, for creativity,
к интересной жизни.
to have an interesting life,
Человек
not just live the boring life.
зрелищами и
And I will add that
человек.
people need something more
Времен, что мы видим из самых
than performances in food. From the ancient times, we see it from the myths. People were always looking at the sky, wondering what is there.
проникнуть глазом, но а потом и
After that, they used not only their eyes, but the tools. And now we have wonderful tools which allow us to go even deeper into the space.
на мой взгляд,
And on the other hand, it's natural demand of a human
в прошлом. Что было,
to know what happened in the past,
что было
the predecessors, what happened with the earth, the
история
history,
и человеческого рода, и
the history of humankind and history of everything.
сейчас вот с точки зрения,
Now, from the point of view of physics,
что мы знаем
because we know
скорости света,
about the
да, мы уже даже
speed of light. Over the last years, we checked the speed of the waves, which also has some limitation. This is one of the wonderful discoveries of the last 4 years, I would say. We can realize that when we look
этому
into the sky, we look into the past. That is why these two
человека смотреть вдаль,
things, the need of a human being to look into the sky and to analyze what happened in the past, of course, they are correlated.
ну мы, глядя вдаль, а у нас для этого
And we look into the sky, and we have all the necessary tools for that.
ну, вот космическую миссию Планк, я даже,
I mentioned the Planck
может быть, самый
discovery. Maybe I will show you the results of this discovery. Now we have one of the most amazing
совместный
events of the
наш эксперимент.
Russian science, together with
Еще
Germans,
один из двух
X-ray gamma rays, one of two telescopes
который
located there, which is called Rosetta, is Hungarian astronomy,
радио астрономия,
radio astronomy,
массу всяких
and there are many different objects.
видим и
We see
похожие на то, что вокруг нас.
something that we got used to, but something which have new properties, galaxies with new properties,
Массивные черные дыры, чем
even
есть.
more massive black holes than the one I gave as an example. At the same time, it's natural characteristic, natural feature of the person to think globally.
Там объектов
Only when we see the list of
общих закономерностей.
objects, we
Поэтому мы
are searching for something common. That is why at the same time,
видим колоссальное
we
количество объектов.
see different objects, a lot of them, the diversity of that, millions and dozens of millions of different celestial objects, stars in the galaxy. We find new
Значит, вот я вам кратко
connections, new links. I would briefly say that
40
the achievements of astronomy over the last 40 years from the point of view of fundamental physics,
есть во Вселенной. Так вот, оказалось,
what we have,
с чем мы все знакомы,
something that we all know,
вокруг нас это протон, нейтон, электрон,
matter,
составляет
proton, neutron, electron, is only
общую плотность, среднюю,
5%
которая, вот я вам пишу,
from the total density of the universe.
10
And this is a very simple equation which you can
она составляет не более
remember. And I said it equals to 5% of the total density. There are leptons, baryons, and photons, but there are two new types of matter which we cannot see.
небарионная темная материя.
Non-relativistic, non-baryonic dark matter, I will expand on that, which makes 25% of the density of the universe. And if we count the particles, 25 plus 5 is only 30%, and 70% is dark energy.
Чем они, значит, слово
Why is it so important? Dark.
ничего такого
There is nothing so
нет, это не
there is nothing so mystical, not the dark
отличается, скажем,
powers, dark force, or something like that, which you can see in the movies. It means that it doesn't produce any light
светом.
with the light as we understand it, ordinary light. In addition,
Из нее луч света,
this dark energy,
поэтому ее с тем же успехом можно
the light, the ray of light can pass through this dark energy easily.
невидимой материи. Поэтому,
But this matter is invisible.
не значит,
Dark doesn't mean bad.
ее просто через нее свет проходит, она сама.
Just light goes through this and it doesn't illuminate itself. And now we have a question. How did we get to know about this?
Идею.
I give you a general idea. So,
И
the specialists in elementary particles
что вы не знаете, что
say that as long as this
есть не та материя, которую мы видим на
is not the matter that we see in experiments, well, you do not see the nature of these kinds of matter. But actually,
Что говорится, природа, это действительно дело физиков.
this is the idea of physics theoretics to think about nature, and we study properties, and we found lots of interesting properties. And in this respect, the very situation and the method of research is very similar to electrical magnetism was being researched end of 18th, beginning of 19th century. The nature of electrical magnetism was not known. However, there were lots of important laws that we study at school, Gauss's law,
Законы Фарадея,
Faraday law, Ohm law, and lots of other specific laws about specific properties. And the method itself is the same.
исследовался электричеством,
As it was researched, we find their sources, and these kinds of matter are visualized only by their gravity. But the method is the same. We find a place
от них есть.
with a gravitation, with gravity, and we see the particles.
Исследовался.
Just to remind you
Смотрим, как
about magnetism, we see these
находим.
particles.
Но опять
And out of that, we find their properties. And there are lots of properties, but
в природе
as to the nature of properties, and more precisely about how these particles are related to those that we know,
скажем вам, ускорителях или вообще в обычной жизни.
So that we leave for specialists in the
элементарных частиц.
physics of elementary particles.
Оказывается, но при этом
So,
уже
at that, we have already seen,
об этом, о первом, говорится, виде, а не
well, the first type
и небарионной темной материи, мы узнали
of dark matter. We got to know watching the movement of stars
в галактиках, так называемое
in galaxies
вращение, а движение
and circulation in
космических
galaxies and space galaxies, and actually Newton gravitation potential and
это разные
moving of photons, different types of lensing, small and
энзимы.
weak and strong, and these are enzymes in regular sense when you see different pictures of the same objects, and what is naturally considered to be
А у нас
a disadvantage,
в астрономии
and in astronomy that is quite useful.
вот эту материю
So as to this matter, we got to know watching
движения вот отдельных
the
частиц.
movement of separate particles,
Вот это темная
and this dark energy
по эволюции всей
as to evolution of the universe overall.
125.
So
Ну и вот эти нам обычная материя,
regular matter,
нейтроны, электроны,
neutrons and electrons, altogether 30, they consist of particle, and this dark energy, this is shapeless. And now we considered this discussion in a different way, which was between Plato and Democritus. Democritus was the first to say that matter
в своей основе должна
in
состоять,
its basis consists of particle,
насколько я помню,
and
в фейнманских лекциях Фейнман
in Feldman lectures it was called the main achievement of physics.
а все считали, что, говорится,
And actually Plato was wrong.
пересмотрели.
But now we reconsidered this result, and it proved to be, as Democritus was 30% right, and 70% Plato proved to be right. So that is the new physics. And now
Перейду к истории.
I move on to the story
Вот уже мы
of universe.
свойства
Already knowing the properties of regular matter, knowing the equations which are used and the laws according to which this is moving, knowing new types of matter, even though we do not know the nature, but we know the properties
мы можем
and do it quite well. So we should say what happened in the past. And I have already mentioned this. That was in the last 40 years, in the recent 40 years. This is the picture showing the history of universe, a well-known part of history of universe. I can tell you that at this picture,
слева направо,
from left to the right, this picture is quite old, and that is why here we see
радиоспутник,
the old radio satellite,
который был примерно лет 10,
which was used like 10 years ago.
и затвердлены данными от более
And now we use more modern satellites.
миссии Планк. Вот. Так вот,
So,
значит, то есть это только часть истории.
this is only part.
Раньше. И же-
That was something that existed before
и не то, что
with this flow, and it's not that we do not have theoretical ideas regarding what was here and what was there,
угодно, но у нас нет
but
данных, что
we do not have data to
сделать выбор. И общий
make a choice. And general idea how we research the history of universe,
археологи.
well, we act somehow similar to archaeologists. We use documents, and archaeologists use the found artifacts during the investigation procedures. How do they get to know this story? So archaeologists find some pieces, and not only pieces, but pieces with some color. And watching this coloring, they can tell you, okay, here we had representatives of, let us say,
Крито-микенской культуры. И вот
Crete-Mycenaean culture, and we also have the same artifacts
скажу
I will
артефакты,
tell you about this artifact.
их специальные
And
специальные
watching their properties, special painting,
мы вот говорим, что в прошлом
we can say that
была такая история Вселенной. Так вот, вам очень
there were layers of universe. So briefly, here is the
Вселенной. Мы сейчас,
what we know about the history of universe, and we say
опять-таки, известная часть
that the well-known story went through 4 main stages. This is a division which is as large as the division of the history of mankind, only primordial, antique, feudal, capitalistic arrangements, and further on,
ссылайтесь и эту откровенную эпоху, как не хотите. Вот. То есть 4 основных эпохи.
4 main epochs.
Вот и глядите вот на эту, вот на
So,
эту линию.
looking at this line, we see that it's quite informative. It depicts the expansion of universe.
Вот тут на
Here you can see
первой стадии. Вот тут
that the first stage, this is the first stage, this is the second stage, the third stage, the fourth stage. At the first stage,
инфляционный.
which is called the inflation stage, and at the last stage, which is a modern one, latest stage, this is the curve
Значит, что расширение
which is curved upwards. It means that expansion continues
автомобиль
in the same way as you
ускоренное движение.
drive your automobile when there is some movement. And at other stages, and this stage is called
Стадия
afterglow light pattern, and this is the matter domination stage. You see this curves is going down, and at these 2 stages the expansion was much slower. So I'd like to summarize which 4 stages are there. Stage number one,
стадия ускоренного развития Вселенной, где в основном
the expansion of universe, where mainly we have domination of the 70% of dark matter. Then there was a stage when mainly
стадия до именирования некритической материи
the stage of domination,
в 5 раз больше,
but out of which 5 times,
если 1/5,
if 1/5
лучше сказать 1/6,
or 1/6 were well-known particles,
то в 5 раз и больше было
so 5 times and more we had these new unrevealed ground particles, and it was preceded by the stage of
возвращения.
radiation,
Это горячим
which is called the
и большим
Big
взрывом. Была
Bang.
еще
There was a stage of even faster development and a cold one when there were no particles. And as to properties, the matter was very similar,
количественная
not quantitative but qualitative, to the shapeless dark matter, dark energy, which exists now. So here is the same thing now. I describe this picture
загадочный надпись.
as I have pressed it into one line.
Такие вся
And in this line, we have all the known story of universe. Initial stage, which is called DS. Then the stage.
эти буквы значат
These letters mean
модель Фридмана
that this is Friedman
Оркер,
Forstner-Orker model, domination of radiation.
radiation dominated. Это же стадия Фридмана,
And this is the same stage,
только до именирования материи.
matter dominated.
Это именно это, а это снова
And this is the same,
стадия. Вот я
another stage.
поставил.
And I have
Ну вот
put a line here.
кратко.
So this is briefly about the continuation of the stage. These stages last for the last 5 billion years. This 9 billion years. This one, well, this is very brief one, and we see not the length of the stage, but to what extent the universe expanded during this stage, and the logarithm here in the degree of expansion. I would like to remind you that
Этих цифр примерно на 2,3.
these figures will be divided by 2.3 3/10, and
Расширилось.
the universe expanded that much. So I would like to tell you, for comparison, how this happened.
В 1979 году мы
By
уверенно
1979, we could certainly say only about 2 historic stages.
говорим
And now we are talking about the third stage, and I'm nearly finalizing. Here are the new artifacts,
по которым и мы говорим,
and we mean that we know
что было в прошлых, это вот
what happened in the past.
совершенно
And here is the picture of universe around us
электромагнитные
with electromagnetic radiations,
2,73 градуса Кельвина,
2.73 Kelvin degrees, and that is
скажем, туда, это его температура
the
чуть-чуть
temperature,
меняется на
which is a little bit different
причины порядка.
by some values like 0,
То есть речь идет о 10
1, 0, 0.00001 microkelvins.
температуры, однако мы ее
That is the difference of temperatures, but we can measure this. So, even though, as I have told you,
нарисовал снизу,
I have pictured the length of every stage of expansion of universe. The first three stages we know, and
только знаем
as to the particles, we only know
дело. Но что мы
the lower limit. But as to colossal precision is the difference of a degree of universe expansion at the very first stage in different points. And the response is like this. Where we have big oceans, the stage was a little bit longer, and with the mountains,
избыток температуры.
this is excess of temperature. That continued a little bit less
Очень малую величину
by a very small value.
относительно
That is related to
100-тысячную. Вот. И, ну, еще
One-
информация
1,000.
излучается
And
как кино.
according to this information, we can divide this. And if to divide this by different figures, well, the response is like this.
Такая сложная
Even though we have quite a complex curve, you see, with the maximum values and the minimum values, it proves to be that in order to describe this,
из опыта брать только одну константу.
we can take only one constant for the simplest model,
В первой стадии
evolution models.
константу нужно брать.
We can take only one constant,
Вот эта красная кривая
and the red curve
модели, и
in
вы,
this model,
как она блестяще
and you can see how this is brilliantly combined with the data. But that's not all. Another part or another proof
еще
or two
поляризация.
elements. This is also linear polarization. That is the effect of one
Тут даже одной
100,000th
миллионной, тут
or 1 millionth.
о единицах микрокельвин
When we're talking about units, microkelvins,
и поляризации. И вот вам опять,
polarization.
как это блестяще.
That is how it is reconciled.
Вот, пожалуй, все, что я хотел
That's all I wanted to tell you.
рассказать. Еще раз скажу,
Once again,
значит, итог сухой остаток.
the final result. Two new types of matter, which are known from laboratory experiments. And in the history of universe, we are firmly convinced now we are talking about four main historical stages. Even I would like to emphasize once again, that this is not a complete arrangement of the universe. What was used before and something will be later. This is the theme of future research. Thank you.
Мы – транспортно-логистический холдинг «Российские железные дороги». Мы развиваем транспортную инфраструктуру страны, строим новые станции, вокзалы и создаем новые возможности для вашего бизнеса. Лучшие скоростные и высокоскоростные поезда сделают ваше путешествие комфортным и безопасным. Мы – локомотив экономики. Сотни миллионов тонн грузов ежегодно. Развитие науки и социальной сферы – это наш вклад в благосостояние страны и ваша уверенность в завтрашнем дне.
Я новая Hyundai Creta. Hyundai.
Есть история фантастическая. Есть история сказочная. Есть страшная история. А есть история реальная. Юка всегда реальная история и диагностика автомобилей с пробегом. Юка – официальный сервис Hyundai. Смотрите историю и диагностику автомобиля и покупайте его онлайн.